Welcome. In this session, we'll walk through a practical outpatient management blueprint for community-acquired pneumonia, CAP. Over the course, we'll focus on a stepwise pathway that mirrors how questions are framed on exams and how decisions are made in real-world practice. We'll cover diagnosis, site of care decisions, antibiotic selection, treatment duration, and follow-up. By the end, you should have a clear framework for approaching ambulatory CAP patients. Let's begin with the overall pathway. Think of outpatient CAP management as a five-phase process. First, assess and establish the diagnosis. Second, triage and determine whether the patient can safely remain an outpatient or requires admission. Third, navigate the protocol divergence and identify which guideline pathway applies to the patient. Fourth, initiate treatment using an appropriate empiric antibiotic regimen. And finally, monitor response and determine treatment duration. If you keep these five phases in mind, most examination questions become much easier to solve. Phase 1. Establishing the baseline. The diagnosis of CAP rests on two key elements. First, a compatible clinical syndrome, such as fever, cough, dyspnea, or sputum production. Second, evidence of a new pulmonary infiltrate on chest imaging. By integrating these findings, we arrive at a working diagnosis of community-acquired pneumonia. Notice that symptoms alone are nonspecific, and imaging improves accuracy. For uncomplicated outpatient disease, routine sputum cultures and extensive testing are generally not necessary. Testing becomes more valuable in severe illness, unusual presentations, and immunocompromised patients. We test when there is high clinical suspicion for a specific pathogen that alters standard therapy. Phase 2, triage, determining the appropriate site of care. After diagnosing CAP, the next step is to decide where the patient should be treated. Always start by checking for critical red flags, such as septic shock, respiratory failure requiring mechanical ventilation, or oxygen saturation below 92% on room air, which indicate the need for inpatient care. Then, assess practical barriers to outpatient treatment, including poor social support, inability to take oral medications, significant comorbidities, impaired cognition, substance abuse, or living far from a medical facility. If any of these are present, hospital admission or transfer is necessary. If not, proceed with objective risk stratification using tools such as the PSI or CURB-65 score to estimate severity. Patients with low scores usually qualify for outpatient care. Intermediate scores may need close follow-up, and high scores often require hospitalization. Always apply clinical judgment. One of the most important updates in modern CAP management involves antibiotic selection. The dilemma is whether to cover atypical agents. For those over 65 and with comorbidities, there's no dilemma. Broader coverage becomes necessary. However, a decision is needed for healthy adults under 65 without a history of antibiotic use. Current recommendations recognize the importance of atypical pathogens and local resistance patterns. The rationale for not covering stems from rising resistance to macrolides and doxycycline, and the rationale for covering atypical agents is the potential morbidity benefit. Atypical pathogens account for up to 22% of CAP cases, and the downsides of such treatment are minimal. For examinations, pay close attention to whether the patient has significant comorbid conditions, because that frequently changes the correct answer. Now, moving to phase 4, let's examine the rationale behind the empiric antibiotic strategy. The emphasis is on targeted therapy, and the target is the bacterial type. We see baseline targets in all patients, atypical targets in about 22% of cases, and expanded targets commonly seen in patients over 65, those with comorbidities, or those who have recently received antibiotics. The baseline targets in all patients include Streptococcus pneumonia and Haemophilus influenzae. High-dose beta-lactams, particularly amoxicillin, which remain highly effective against them, form the backbone of therapy. Atypical targets are Mycoplasma, Legionella, and Chlamydia. They require macrolides or doxycycline. Beta-lactams alone do not reliably cover them. The expanded targets include beta-lactamase-producing Haemophilus influenzae, Moraxella catarrhalis, and methicillin-susceptible Staphylococcus aureus, MSSA. These expanded targets require an upgraded backbone, namely amoxicillin clavulinate. It is often combined with a macrolide or doxycycline. The goal is to provide adequate coverage while avoiding unnecessarily broad-spectrum therapy. Let us move on to the treatment pathways. For healthy adults without major comorbidities, treatment pathway A applies. The preferred regimen is high-dose amoxicillin, 1 gram 3 times daily. When atypical coverage is desired, doxycycline or azithromycin may be used. For patients with mild penicillin allergy, selected cephalosporins may be reasonable alternatives. Notice the emphasis on targeted therapy. The objective is not to use the broadest antibiotic available, but rather the narrowest effective regimen. Now let us see what treatment pathway B is. Patients with significant comorbidities follow treatment pathway B. Examples include chronic heart disease, chronic lung disease, diabetes, liver disease, kidney disease, or immunocompromising conditions. The preferred regimen is amoxicillin clavulinate, combined with either azithromycin, clarithromycin, or doxycycline. An alternative option is either a cephalosporin or a fluoroquinolone monotherapy. While fluoroquinolones provide excellent coverage, they carry important adverse effects and should generally be reserved for appropriate situations. In examinations, when you see CAP plus significant comorbidity, think broader coverage. Now moving on to penicillin allergies. The first step is determining the nature of the reaction. In patients with mild non-IgE mediated reactions characterized by a maculopapular rash, it is safe to use second or third generation cephalosporins. In contrast, severe IgE mediated reactions such as urticaria, angioedema, anaphylaxis, and severe delayed reactions require complete avoidance of cephalosporins and penicillins. In those situations, the alternate regimen is a respiratory fluoroquinolone monotherapy. Accurate allergy assessment can significantly expand treatment options and improve antibiotic stewardship. Let us move on to the viral co-infection conundrum. Respiratory viruses frequently coexist with pneumonia. Testing may identify influenza, RSV, or SARS-CoV-2. However, a positive viral test does not automatically exclude bacterial pneumonia. The clinical question is whether to initiate empiric antibiotics in such situations. A suspicion of a concurrent bacterial process, an inability to rule out a concurrent bacterial infection, and the patient's inability to reliably follow up if symptoms worsen are indications to initiate empirical antibiotic therapy. When resources are limited or diagnostic uncertainty persists, it is generally safer to complete an appropriate antibiotic course than to miss bacterial CAP. This is a common examination principle. Viral infection and bacterial pneumonia are not mutually exclusive. The duration of therapy. Treatment duration has become substantially shorter than in the past. Most ambulatory CAP patients require only 3 to 4 days of therapy, provided they are clinically stable and afebrile for 48 hours or more. Longer courses are generally unnecessary and may increase adverse effects and antibiotic resistance. Remember, dyspnea or a lingering cough is not an indication to extend antibiotic therapy. A favorite examination question is treatment duration, so remember this key message. Shorter courses are often sufficient when the patient responds appropriately. Let us see the follow-up and clinical trajectory. Patients begin to show signs of improvement by day 2. A follow-up visit or call within 24 to 48 hours to assess the initial response is appropriate. Symptoms such as fever typically improve early. Cough and fatigue often take longer to resolve. Routine follow-up chest radiographs are not required for patients who are recovering clinically. The infiltrates take almost a month to resolve. The most important follow-up assessment is the patient's clinical progress. Failure to improve should prompt reconsideration of the diagnosis, evaluation for resistant organisms, complications, or alternative causes of symptoms. Now let's bring everything together. Confirm the diagnosis using compatible symptoms and imaging evidence. Assess severity and determine whether outpatient treatment is appropriate. Identify whether the patient is healthy or has significant comorbidities. Select antibiotics accordingly. Account for penicillin allergy when necessary. Monitor clinical response within 48 to 72 hours, and complete a short course of treatment. It is clinical stability, not the presence of cough or infiltrates on radiography, that determines the duration of antibiotic coverage. If you follow this structured framework, you'll be able to answer most outpatient CAP questions in both examinations and clinical practice. Thanks for joining us, and hope to see you again in the next lesson.
This content is not intended for clinical guidance, use in medical clinics, or patient management. It serves as supplementary information for medical students preparing for examinations and should be used in conjunction with their official course materials. In the event of any discrepancies between this content and the prescribed curriculum, the curriculum shall take precedence until further review and clarification are made by the concerned students. The contributors to this video have exercised due diligence, but the content may become outdated quickly.